Welcome to channel. Today, we explore story filled with unexpected twists. Please, subscribe and like to stay updated. Let's begin. Looking back, I should have seen the symptoms of disaster. But you've heard the old phrase that love is blind, and in many circumstances, it couldn't be truer. My name is Derek. My wife of 18 years ended up becoming unfaithful. There were indications, and I'm sure others knew before me. But what about the whole love is blind thing? It is real. Since we'll be talking about her in depth, let me provide some history. Rachel is a born and bred Midwestern girl. She is the middle child of 5, with 2 elder brothers and 2 younger sisters. Growing up, they weren't really destitute, but money was scarce. Her father worked hard constructing drywall, and they got by, but there wasn't much money left over for indulgences. This is important since it helps you understand her upbringing. Rachel was hesitant and insecure when we first met. She was still a timid and reserved girl. I wish I hadn't been the one who changed it. When we first met, she was a 54 brunette with blue eyes and a slender frame. Her figure was petite, but her proportions were just right. I've always appreciated a person's overall appearance, not just one feature. She had a pretty face, even though she inherited her family's trait of a weak jaw. It gave her a slightly buck-toothed look, though she had nice, pretty teeth. The first thing she wanted to fix when we could afford it was her jaw. I have to admit, after the sir when I told her, "Your new hairstyle really flatters your face," she'd just say, "Thanks, hon," and maybe give me a quick kiss on the cheek. But if someone else complimented her, she'd light up. It never really made sense to me, but I just figured that when it came from me, it was expected and didn't hold as much value. This wasn't all bad, because she was usually in a good mood after receiving these unsolicited compliments. And as the saying goes, if mama isn't happy, then nobody is happy. However, it did get a little tiresome after a while. I know that as her husband, I am expected to say nice things and all that, but I truly meant what I told her. And actually, it didn't start off that horrible. She'd receive a praise from some random person, and it would simply brighten her up and not much more. Then she grew to want and expect attention. Initially, it was pushed as something for me, with comments like, "Would you like it if my jugs were bigger?" Now, if you've never had to go through this, consider yourself fortunate. I said early on that there was nothing about her physique that needed to be modified, enhanced, or anything else you may call it. I felt she was hot and lovely exactly the way she was. So the conversation shifted to, "Would you be cool with my having it done for me?" And what can you say about that? I still believed it was a significant investment and danger for something I felt she did not need. She did, of course. The augmentation seemed to be beneficial to her, and after she was completely recovered, the sex was out of this world. There were unexpected positives to her change. For one thing, she seemed much more confident than before, which may sound weird even today, but there was a noticeable difference in how she held herself. Small details stuck out, such as how she used to be self-conscious and reticent, but now she seemed relaxed and at ease, even in situations that would have previously made her bashful. Her increased confidence was visible not just in private, but also in how she interacted with her surroundings. She began to really embrace herself, and it was great to witness her blossom into someone who actually appreciated how she looked. Her self-esteem seemed to improve, which was quite surprising considering what she had gone through throughout the jaw reconstruction surgery. Others noticed the improvements as well. They would sometimes remark on how fantastic she looked, and those comments, although basic, seemed to elevate her spirits even more. While the transition benefited her the most, I can't deny how lovely it was to see her confidence emerge in the world. Her new look wasn't just about aesthetics, it was about how she finally felt comfortable in her own skin. It was evident that this new chapter in her life was about more than just appearances. It was about being the greatest version of herself and learning to truly accept that. The adjustments boosted her confidence, attractiveness, and overall visibility. The praises after her jaw surgery were far easier for me to absorb than the attention she got after the breast enlargement. The remarks were often inappropriate and passed the line into uncomfortable territory. What concerned me more was that she seemed to love it. Her new dresses and tops often had more daring necklines, and the dresses themselves seemed shorter. Because she didn't mind the attention, it just inspired others to be bolder. People I thought were my friends would openly flirt with her, and if I said anything about it, I would come out looking horrible. We were at a bar one night, and I saw Rachel always had a drink in her hand, but she didn't have her purse, and I hadn't paid for one of them. I asked her how she got them, and she smiled, saying she showed the bartender her jugs for each one. We had a lengthy discussion about it the following day, but I knew it hadn't sunk in. She adored it. When she was drinking, I had to keep an eye on her at all times, otherwise some clown might just want to see them, and she would comply. Her conduct was becoming humiliating at times, and when I informed her about it, she volunteered to go by herself so I wouldn't feel ashamed. Yeah, like if it were a genuine choice. As her flirting and flashing became more frequent, so did our arguing. And I got weary of men blatantly ogling her in front of me, so I begged her to tone it down and respect me. I told her I loved her and could understand how the attention made her feel, but she needed to know how it made me feel. For a time, she did. She continued to dress sexily and flirt, but in a more restrained way. She still appreciated attention, but there were no flashes that I was aware of. We were doing well, and everything seemed to have calmed down, at least outside the bedroom. She was still my fantasy come true inside our bedroom, and the sex had been very satisfying since the fighting had ceased. Then she met Chloe. Chloe began working with Rachel approximately a year after the augmentation, and 7 or 8 months after she had finally reduced her public appearances. I had a nasty feeling about Chloe the first time I saw her, but there was no way I was going to win that argument. Rachel had taken on a mentor-type position with the new lady and felt she needed to help her settle in, not only at work, but also in her new city. This naturally led to them going on lunch dates, shopping outings, and, eventually, ladies' evenings out. Let me tell you that a single friend is the greatest threat to a marriage on any side. Single girlfriends, who are younger, more attractive, and a little wild, are lethal. Chloe was all of that in duplicate. Rachel returned home at a respectable hour and, despite having been drinking, did not seem to be inebriated. She flirted and danced those evenings, and she almost screwed me to death. But who was going to complain? Then the evenings out became more frequent and longer lasting, and we started to dispute about them. I was certain her new acquaintance was a terrible influence, but I didn't realize how awful. I tried asking Rachel generic questions about the evenings out, and she quickly grew defensive. There has to be more to this tale. I needed to know what was going on, and no one was going to inform me. So I did what any man would do in these circumstances. I followed them. One night, they went to a club Rachel had always maintained was too young for us, which meant the clientele was significantly younger than us. It was, however, the perfect age for Chloe, and Rachel, being an elderly lady on her own, was not going to be an issue. Me? Well, I was going to stick out like crazy in there. I gritted my teeth and waited until they had been inside for a few minutes before entering. The area was pretty crowded, particularly near the dance floor, but I was able to obtain a seat at the bar where I could view the majority of the club. It had only been 20 minutes after they had entered, yet there they were, at a booth near the dance floor, with 2 other men. Chloe sat with a blonde-haired surfer clone on one side of the table, while Rachel sat opposite from her with a dark-haired and dark-skinned male. Or should I say boy? He seemed barely old enough to drink. This photo has several flaws, and the warning bells in my brain were so loud that they overpowered the music. I wanted to face her, but I didn't want the conflict that would start. If she was only flirting and dancing, we could speak about it later. Whether it was a date or something more, our relationship was unlikely to endure. So I chose a wait-and-see strategy. I hoped for the best, and I saw the worst. It didn't take long, really. The first dance was a slow one, and he was all over her. They danced for around the first minute, and dry hummed the remainder of the tune. His hands moved wherever they pleased, and his tongue spent as much time in her mouth as it did his. Chloe and her partner were no better, but she was not my worry. My main issue was what to do with Rachel. I needed to end this. Actually, I had to attempt to convince her to stop it. We had fought earlier, and I figured I'd use it to contact her and apologize, and perhaps persuade her to return home before she did something we couldn't fix. When she stopped humping his leg and sat back down at the table, I immediately texted a message. Sorry we were fighting again. I adore you. From where I was seated, I could see her looking at her phone and picking it up. After reading the message, she just put the phone back on the table. Not a good beginning. As a last opportunity for her to rescue us, I sent this note. Please come home, or phone me, so we can discuss. Then I watched and waited. Finally, I saw her tapping on the phone. I hoped for the best. What I received was "I'll be home later, having fun with the ladies." After sending that, she turned to kiss her date. That escalated into a strong petting session that made me doubt that they hadn't previously had sex together. Even if they hadn't earlier, it seemed like a done deal tonight. My world was disintegrating right in front of me, and I knew we were over. She had gone to a place we could not return from. The truth is that seeing her with him made me realize that no matter what she did or did not do, I would never be able to trust her again. Without faith, there is no marriage. The next dance was fast-paced, yet it seemed even more passionate than the first. She moved energetically, getting closer to him as they danced. People surrounding them were watching with interest, but she didn't appear to bother. The dance concluded with her sharing a quick kiss with Chloe as the two men exchanged gestures with each female. They then returned to the table, where the mood remained upbeat. I watched the scene develop, noting my wife coming closer to him, her body language showing a strong bond. Her head reclined on the booth cushion, eyes closed, and she seemed to be completely engrossed in the moment. It was evident that their relationship had piqued the interest of others in the pub, as others nudged and pointed to the spectacle. Nearby, Chloe and her date were similarly focused, creating an ambience in which the four seemed to be in their own universe. As I traversed the room, I arrived at the table just as she seemed to be entirely engaged in their conversation. She was so concentrated on him that she didn't realize I stretched out and grasped her hand, bringing her back to reality. My grandma only noticed I was standing there when her wedding band started to fall off her finger. When her eyes opened, I had the ring in my hand. I pocketed the family treasure and removed the gold band off my own ring finger. She was still recovering from her climax and horror when my ring bounced over the table in front of her. Today's automobiles are much better than those manufactured roughly 12 years ago. My Chevy Camaro SS will enable you to put an incredible amount of space between items in minutes. Before the phone rang, I was miles away. Of course, I declined the call. It was too late to speak now. I returned home. Well, back to the house that used to be our home, and tossed some items in a suitcase in case I needed them in the following few days. And within 15 minutes, I was on my way to another location. As I approached the interstate on-ramp, my phone called, and I rejected it by pressing the hands-free button. Obviously, that was her. I hit the power button to turn off the phone. It would be unpleasant if I spoke to her right now. I just knew I needed to be alone and ponder. My mind is an analytical one. People have always coveted my ability to solve issues rapidly. However, it is really a curse, because it cannot overlook an issue. There will be no rest until it has solved the issue. So, as the machine in my skull eats through the data and rearranges the jigsaw pieces, I drive nowhere in particular. The difficulty is that no matter how the parts are organized, they will not fit together. My mind understands what's wrong. It's extremely evident. The pieces depicting rage and anguish are much too huge to fit, and the portion that symbolizes love has shrunk dramatically. The component of trust is lacking in action, and it won't be as simple as checking beneath the table for it. But herein lays the dilemma. Hurt and fury may readily replace the void left by love and trust. The trust is gone, but love, despite its shrinking, persists. Love isn't something you can turn off and forget about. I had adored her throughout our relationship. I liked her even when I was irritated with her for flashing her jugs to the bartender. I admired her when she rejected my comments and cherished those of others. And I adored her when she seemed to go beyond all of that. I didn't always like her or how she behaved, but I loved her. Love is more than simply remembering the happy times. It also includes remembering the bad moments and conquering them together. So there's the issue with my thoughts. The components will not fit, yet they have always fit previously. So it doggedly attempts to make them fit. So I drive, just following the headlights while the machine churns and attempts to make everything better. Happy memories sweep over the back of my eyes while the machine works to minimize the pain and rage components. But each passage only provides momentary comfort, and the fragments seem to expand bigger with each try. The actual world gradually imposes itself on me, and I come to comprehend various things. First, I really need to locate a restroom. Second, the automobile need petrol. Third, I don't know where I am. Finally, I've been lucky to avoid killing myself or others when driving in my near-zombie condition. For the first time in recent months, luck was with me, and I discovered the three things I needed most in life: a gas station for filling one tank and emptying another, a reasonable assortment of cookie-cutter chain hotels. There's also a booze shop. I checked into one of the motels after purchasing a huge bottle of Captain Morgan spiced rum. I know who I am, and my mind. As I previously said, peace would not be possible until all of the parts fit together. and they don't fit right now. It will be a long time before they fit together properly again. The only other alternative is to attempt to jumble all of the inputs so that the mind shuts down from the bad info. It worked in some respects, because the next thing I remember is being disoriented when I awoke in a different room. For a few seconds, there was just the problem of how the heck I came myself there to solve. However, as the parts of the jigsaw began to fit together, the result was an unsightly sight. The vision moved and morphed through a string of terrible recollections. Horrible thoughts of her and him laughing together and then touching hands. And pictures of events I couldn't stand to recall invaded my thoughts. I started to weep, and I couldn't tell you how long it lasted. I know it was late in the morning before I dragged myself into the shower and got dressed. I really wanted coffee. My head still hurt from the rum, and I realized I needed to eat something, even if it seemed pointless. There was a Sunrise Diner, as there are in most southern cities with hotels. The coffee was really beneficial, as were the fatty eggs and bacon, which helped absorb the residual booze. In the harsh light of the new day, I reached some conclusions. They sucked, but there didn't seem to be many alternatives left. First, I needed to contact her and start the dirty business. I understood there were only a few possible outcomes. Either she could recognize how severely she messed up and not attempt to justify her actions, basically, enter a guilty plea and leave herself at the mercy of the court. Option 2. Follow the unfaithful's guide and attempt to minimize both the problem and the harm. As my phone started back up, I pondered my options. And, although I hoped for choice 1, I had previously loved her sincerely and known her intimately, it seemed more likely that option 2 would be chosen. There were several missed calls and messages from her, and the analyst in my mind noticed that the first call from her home phone came immediately after my abrupt departure. I grinned slightly, thinking I'd wrecked his evening. Before the analyst said that he may have spent the night there since I was absent in action. Mistrusting someone is a terrible mistress. The texts and missed calls continued until almost morning. I had wasted myself into a coma long before that. I opted not to listen to yesterday night's calls until after our live talk. It probably wouldn't have mattered much anyhow. Her phone rang only once before she answered. "Oh my God, are you all right? I've been trying to call you all night, and you never answered." I wasn't in the best frame of mind, Rachel. I couldn't talk to you without losing control. I understand that, and I'm sorry. Okay, Rachel, I've had time to think and some time to get my anger under control. I'm going to give you this chance to tell me whatever you need to say. She began with the cheater's typical phrase. It wasn't what it looked like. So you're saying that when I walked up and saw you laughing and leaning into him like that, I somehow misunderstood? What? You just tripped into his arms or something? I know how bad it must have looked, but I didn't know what I was doing. ID had a lot to drink, and maybe he spiked my drink or something. I was watching you for a short while before that, Rachel. He wasn't forcing you into anything. And you weren't drinking that much, either. She paused before asking, "How long were you there?" "I got there just after you did. I watched you with him for a long time, Rachel." "Too long, really." I told her I'd seen her disregard my first attempt to save us, and then lie to me when she answered the last. I informed her that even though I knew she had probably already had sex with him, we may have had a chance if she had stopped and returned to me. But seeing her brush me off and walk straight to her partner killed any hopes of that. She started to weep, and for a brief moment, my determination slipped. But just for a second. The analyst saw that there was no denial of having intercourse with him. She began going over the cheater's all-time hit list, starting with that old favorite. It didn't mean anything. If she thinks it, there is no way to overcome this. Her faithfulness and my confidence in her meant everything to me. If sleeping with another guy means nothing, we're doomed. It should have made her so upset that she would have stopped. In reality, the first time she kissed another guy or allowed him to feel her up, or any of a long list of unacceptable behaviors for a married woman to do, should have meant a lot to her and stopped her before we got to this stage. When I expressed my views to her, she did not have a positive response. So she queued up the next biggest hit with the good old, "I never meant to hurt you." I responded with the following: "You never meant to hurt me? Really? What in the hell could have convinced you that I would not be hurt by what you were doing? You may not think you meant to inflict pain, but there is no way you can spin it where, when I found out, I would not be hurt by it. That is just an excuse to ease your guilty mind." A lull ensued as that one sank in, and after a little intermission, we retreated to the old staple. "But I don't love him." "I love you." "You don't love him, but you love me?" That is fairly hilarious. Oh, I can buy the not loving him bit. He was much too young to be a permanent addition. Now, about the part where you claim you love me, well, you may say it, but your actions reveal something else entirely. No one who cared about someone, let alone loved them, would behave the way you did. Sorry, I'm not even partly convinced of that. But you have to understand, it was just sex. It was just sex? Did you really just say that? I mean, really? It isn't just sex. It's a death blow to faith and trust and love. If you believe that having sex with another man isn't a big deal, then what would count? Would it take having sex with more than one? Wait, have you done that yet? Never mind. It doesn't matter anyway. What if I told you I had sex with my assistant? Would that be a big deal to you? I realized how dumb that sounded. Please, give us another chance. I'll never do anything like that again. You'll never do anything like that again? Maybe you're speaking the truth. Then, you may not be. How could I know for sure? I would have to monitor everything you did for a long time, if not forever. No, it won't work. I'm not going to be a jailer or a cuck. You killed my faith in you. And there is no coming back. What made you do it anyway? Or do I even want to know? A lengthy pause from her end confirms that I am correct. Her crying is all I hear for a long, until she adds, it was just something I needed to get out of my system. Just something I needed to get out of my system? Is that a one-time thing like chickenpox? Or something more often, like a seasonal allergy? This is just like, I'll never do it again. You felt the need to do it once. The fear would be with me for life that you would feel the need again. Sorry. Try another tune. I want dance to this one. It all just got out of control. It was supposed to be a one-night fling, and then would be back to normal. You were never supposed to know about it. I was never supposed to know. So that makes it okay then? What? I don't know won't hurt me, right? You may have sex with whoever you want as long as I don't know. Is there any harm? Pure and simple. This goes back to the never meant to hurt you thing. It's a lie you tell yourself to make it okay. Baby, I know now how badly I screwed up. I know we can get through this. I don't want to lose you. You know we can get through this? Finally, something I agree on. Okay, we'll get through this. No, not together, but as freshly single folks. You don't want to lose me? Seems I lost you when Chloe took over. You lost me the first time you were with another man. We were over when this began. I didn't fully understand that until last night. But you left me months ago. I guess I cramped your freedom too much, and Chloe showed you how to have fun again. You have the freedom to do whatever you wish now. We are done as a couple. You killed any chance at having a life together. And divorce is our only future. You're free now. To go and have fun. She started to scream, as if in anguish. And I pressed the button to stop the call. Then I hit the power button to turn off the phone. For me, there was simply the process of being unmarried ahead of us. She'd spoken her bit, and I'd spoken mine. She didn't appear to think it was that important. For me, it was. Sure, there were choices like counseling and therapy, but the most of the good could have been done before she offered herself to another guy. Naturally, her ideas differed. She battled her divorce in numerous ways. First, there was court-ordered counseling. What a waste of time and money. Even the counselor warned her that there seemed to be no way for me to trust her again. She argued over terms and conditions just to postpone the process until I consented to accept whatever settlement she proposed. She screamed, pleaded, and offered anything if I tried again. But how much is a liar's pledge truly worth? She never appeared to get the point I attempted to make repeatedly while driving home. It just could not function without faith. I still loved her and probably always would, but I wouldn't be able to trust her. The other huge, like a 300-pound gorilla in the room, was that even if I still loved her, or at least her memories, there was no way to remove the images in my mind. There was never going to be a moment when we attempted to make love and her face didn't look as it did that night in the pub, bringing it all back down on me. So, there you have it. There will be no burning the soil for vengeance. There are no scorched earth techniques. No retribution. None of this changes anything. She still offered herself to him. He cheated my wife, and her buddy encouraged her to choose the wrong way. Even after some cunning retaliation, everything would remain the same. The only thing that could change is you. You become the monster. You are the madman now. Now let's hear Rachel's tale. It's largely my fault if that occurs since I'm still trying to make sense of it all. Derek portrayed me rather well in his account of my fall, at least physically. Mentally? I doubt he could do it as well as he did physically. It is difficult for me to accomplish this. Looking back involves recalling a lot of unpleasant, horrible things I've done. Most days, looking ahead does not make me feel any better. So I may as well do this. I've come to view my existence as the three faces of Rachel. I'll attempt to clarify what I mean in the following. My first face is the one I've worn for much of my life. It was not unattractive. It also wasn't lovely. At least, I didn't think so when I saw it every day in the mirror. Like too many women, I was constantly preoccupied with my own perceived inadequacies. If I were absolutely honest, I'd say I was at best attractive. I liked my eyes, and my nose was little and feminine. However, every time I glanced in the mirror, particularly after applying lipstick, my mouth looked completely incorrect. I had a weak jaw, or something like. It wasn't too horrible, actually. However, my lower jaw did not align with my upper, resulting in an overbite. And it made me seem buck-toothed. Sure, it has been this way my whole life. We all have a common familial characteristic. But it didn't influence my perspective. I was certain that the operation I discussed with the physicians would make me more appealing. Growing up may be difficult, as I experienced. With 5 kids and 2 busy parents, we had to compete for their attention. Due to limited finances, we had to fight for their money whether we wanted clothing, shoes, or anything else. When you add in the start of hormones and the first feelings of attraction to males, it's difficult not to be that girl. Oh, you know who I'm talking about. She is the first person every male in the room notices when she walks in. She's the one us weaker females keep an eye on as the guys we were just chatting to follow her across the room. Best case scenario, when they look back, they seem somewhat guilty. Worst case scenario, they just go off and leave you without looking back. I never had great clothing, cute shoes, salon nails, or whatever I didn't need. I looked and felt plain by all standards. Or, at most, mediocre. Boys in the early days were much too simple to figure out. They were ready to chat to me, flirt, or date me as long as one of those females was not around. I figured out early on that I was not their ideal girl. But they thought I'd be easy to acquire. When they didn't obtain what they wanted, they just walked away without looking back. I'd been burned by too many guys in my adolescence and struggled to trust. I was too used to being a transient item until a better something or someone came along. And then there was Derek. He was attractive, charming, funny, and lovely. So he was totally out of my league, correct? So why did he seem so different? For the first time in my life, I was chatting to a man who didn't seem to notice when that female stepped in. I could not believe it. I couldn't trust it. I maintained the customary boundaries up and didn't allow him to approach too near. I believed if he didn't receive the sex he desired, he'd go away like everyone else. But he did not walk away. I'd monitor him at times when he wasn't aware I was there. When that female walked across the room, his head followed her, exactly like the other males. However, he did not seem to notice her while speaking with me. Could he actually be interested in me? We dated. We danced. We kissed. I fell in love. I was certain that was how I felt. Thinking about it now and writing it down, I'm not sure. But there isn't much I know for sure right now. When I met Derek, neither I nor him were virgins. The truth is, he probably had more experiences than I did, or at least more enjoyable ones. I'd been cheated by 3 guys before Derek, but I felt like a virgin in one key regard. I'd never had someone make love to me. Yes, I had sex or gone all the way, as they say. They didn't care about me. They simply wanted to get inside my trousers. Derek was the first, and still the only person to genuinely make love to me. I knew this was how it should have been from the first time we made love. He spoke to me as he kissed me endlessly before beginning to undress me. There are so many various methods of kissing. He kissed me gently, hungered for me, open-mouthed, tongue wrestling. Then gently again. He tenderly kissed my lips before moving on to my neck and ears, finally trickling down. I almost stopped him before he could reach my chest. I've always loathed the way I looked, particularly my chest and chin. Fortunately, such anxieties could be concealed behind loose garments or a padded bra. But I couldn't avoid someone seeing the true me. Still, he didn't seem to notice or care. He spent what seemed like an eternity concentrating on me, demonstrating patience and caring in ways I had never seen before. His soft touch and attention made me feel things I never imagined possible. A profound feeling of connection and acceptance. I'd always been frightened of being genuinely seen. But his deeds differed. He did not hurry, and he was not demanding anything. He concentrated on making me comfortable, which was a totally new experience for me. For the first time, I allowed myself to rest. The walls I had created around my fears began to fall down, and I understood I didn't have to be flawless for him to care about me. I was so caught up in the moment, utterly captivated by the feelings, that I didn't notice he was getting closer. until I felt his delicate touch around my waist. Others have mentioned similar experiences, such as how closeness might create an overpowering feeling of connection and concern. However, I couldn't help but feel self-conscious. What if I wasn't as perfect as I expected? I tried to take good care of myself, but self-doubt crept in. What if I'm not enough? Those ideas ran through my head. But as his warmth and care enveloped me, all of my anxieties evaporated. The questions that formerly seemed so vital just vanished, replaced with a deep feeling of trust and peace. When I returned to the real world after what had to be the finest climax a female could possibly have, my eyes opened to discover him staring into them. Damn, how long was I gone, anyway? But their looks communicated more than any words we had ever exchanged. Those eyes suggested he wanted me. He wanted to satisfy me. He wanted to share his delights with me. They said he cared for me, perhaps even loved me. His gaze never left mine as he got closer. The tension between us is tangible. He leaned down and softly kissed me, holding me in that moment. Instead of rushing forward, he lingered, just near enough to sense the strength of our bond. He kissed me with greater passion. His kisses went from my neck to my mouth in an affectionate cadence that felt sincere and gentle. In that calm, I finally felt the full force of his presence in my life. I was prepared to accept what was happening between us. I wondered why he was smiling at me. Then everything became evident. He wasn't the only one taking the lead. It was also me, meeting him halfway, completely open to the future we were creating together. He kissed me passionately, and I felt a rush of connection that left me breathless. For a brief time, all else disappeared, and I allowed myself to get lost in the intensity of the feelings. He held me tight, allowing me time to regain my balance. And when I did, we surged ahead in perfect harmony. That was what had been waiting for. An indication that I was prepared to confront him with the same zeal and determination that he had showed me. The connection we felt was by far the most powerful emotion I'd ever had. He navigated our relationship with patience and care, knowing when to press ahead and when to allow me take the initiative. I'm not sure how long it took us to genuinely develop together, but I know we weren't simply existing together. We were creating something substantial and enduring. It was then that I realized the difference between merely being with someone and actually loving them. Our connection was never an issue. I was the issue. I wasn't prepared to acknowledge it at the moment. We dated. We fell in love. We finally married, just like everybody else. But what we had was far from ordinary. We had wonderful adventures, numerous moments of hilarity, and a life full of happiness and progress. Then, during one of my 8-month checks, the dentist brought up the jaw reconstruction again. Something about how if I was going to get it done, it was better to do it now rather than later. You know, being younger means having an easier time with things. I discussed it with Derek, and although he didn't understand the point, he understood how important it was to me. So everything were resolved. I was finally going to get my jaw repaired. The second phase, I couldn't believe the change after it was done. It was pricey, even with insurance. It was excruciating, even with drugs. And having your lips wired shut for weeks was an absolute pain. Have you ever converted a burger into a smoothie? I needed to have one. I was so sick of broth and jello. The procedure was quite tough. They sliced my jaw in half on both sides and inserted plates to shift my chin forwards. The first day the bandages came off, I felt it was a tremendous mistake. Eventually, the swelling and bruises subsided. After all was said and done, what I saw in the mirror was better than I could have dreamed. I was beautiful throughout my life. Okay, I will say it. I was more than attractive. I had to retrain how to apply blush on my cheeks to match the new lines. There were new haircuts that better suit the changing shape of my jawline. It was enjoyable and thrilling, and I was pleased. The comments of friends and colleagues were a huge boost to my self-esteem. Let us be honest and call it ego at this point. But they are my buddies, correct? You might have a Frankenstein scar, and they'd ignore it, at least in your face. Strangers provided the biggest benefit. I observed that the males on the street took a much longer look at me. There appeared to be a lot of strange minor occurrences, such as seeing the same person in every aisle of the grocery store when I was shopping. Then one night, when we were out, something occurred. I left the table and went to the ladies' room. This was probably our first night out after the procedure. As I made my way to the powder room, I realized that almost every male in there was looking at me. I also observed that most of their dates or spouses gave me the evil eye. Then it struck me. I'd become that girl, and I liked it. Following that, I would go out of my way to get attention. I dressed nicer, not slutty, but certainly sexier. I started to need the attention of strangers. I know Derek could believe I was dissatisfied with his praise and desired it from others, but I don't think he realized how accurate it was. I felt like I had spent much of my life in the shadows, and now I was finally able to enjoy the spotlight. Unfortunately, I now see that I had also connected Derek with the shadow existence. It was very amazing. I enjoyed all the increased attention, and it became my drug. But the magic did not endure. People kept saying lovely things. I could still turn more men's heads than I had in my whole life. But my old behaviors returned to haunt me. My face was no longer a problem, so I focused on my other fault. My breasts. Or, more specifically, the absence of them. Derek was completely against the notion. I eventually won his reluctant assent, but I know he never really believed it was something I needed. However, after considerably less time and discomfort than the jaw surgery, I was the happy owner of a set of D-cup jugs. Yeah, I understand. Up until today, those were my breasts. That was for the small glasses I used to own. These were jugs, damn it. I enjoyed how they stared at me. I liked how firm they were, and even with my increased size, I didn't need a bra. And I liked how well my outfits fit and looked with them. The difficulty is that they are only intended for a small audience. What good is that? You do not hang pieces of art in your closet, do you? Of course not. Beauty is intended to be shared and observed. So, to be honest, I was far too open about who got to view them. Hell, I wanted everyone to see them. I kept the old ones hidden throughout my life since they made me feel humiliated. I was only informing the world that there had been some adjustments. It was the first significant argument Derek and I ever had. And he was correct. I knew it even then. So I toned things down. A lot. And, at least while Derek was around, I kept the females under wraps. Derek said something about my flirtation. Okay, sure. It was horrible enough when he was there. If I went someplace alone, there were men hitting on me. Hell, I had attractive ladies approaching me. And if he wasn't there to take offense, what damage did it do? Then Chloe came to work with me. Chloe was unfamiliar with me and my past. She recognized me for who I was at the time and accepted that I had always been that way. Chloe was that girl in any room. She had always been that girl. So she wouldn't comprehend my life. We were assigned to work together so that I could teach her how things worked around the facility. That caused us to become friends. Following that, there will be evenings out after work. Chloe and I always made a lot of men's heads turn. It was a running joke between us whenever we went out. Hell, evenings out with Chloe were simple and free. I don't believe one of us has ever had to purchase our own drinks. Looking back, I can see the whole thing falling apart. But for the time, it was just two females having fun. Derek didn't see or know who I was with the first time I cheated on him. It was with Chloe. It occurred one night when we were drinking and tormenting the boys like normal. I suggested flashing the bar to completely blow their heads. Chloe questioned whether I truly wanted to drive them crazy, and I responded, sure. She turned to me and started kissing me. It's more than simply playing. But he genuinely kissed me. I do want to claim I was astonished and wounded, or anything that would lead you to think I didn't appreciate it. But I would be lying. She was very lovely to kiss. Nobody had ever kissed me the way she did. Derek got close. But with a female, things were different. Not much better, really. It just seems more thrilling. Because we weren't meant to do that. I don't want to relive all that occurred. But I can't say I really regret it. I regret betraying Derek. And I wish we could have spoken about our emotions honestly. Perhaps we could look at this jointly. But that may have been much more difficult. That night seemed to breach some boundaries. And before long, the two of us were competing with one another on our evenings out. I'm certain Chloe took more than one of our admirers home. But I just led them on and abandoned them. At least I was able to do so for a long time. Then Derek and I started arguing over our evenings out. Chloe is a lousy buddy. And us. I should have known enough to halt everything right then. Derek's mind is a weird thing. I've known him long enough to understand how it worked. The thing is, I thought I knew the secret. That is, if there is no trigger point, his mind does not respond. When he is thinking about anything, he cannot stop until it is resolved. However, if there is nothing to initiate the process, there is no issue to fix. The most of the harm had been done before we battled about Chloe. No, I hadn't had complete intercourse with another guy. But there were far too many things that I knew were wrong. I will not lie anymore. I knew it was terrible to do these things behind his back. The problem was that it was all too easy to forget when in the moment. It was all too easy to convince myself that what he didn't know wouldn't damage him. With males complimenting me and Chloe encouraging me, there was no time to think about Derek or our relationship. I should have known better than to attempt to avoid answering Derek's questions regarding the evenings out. A half response is worse than no answer with him. However, any option would be sufficient to activate the machine. Once woken, the machine would operate until the issue is resolved. Anger over Derek's envious response to my having fun with a buddy, and my own growing interest, got the best of me. I let a guy to screw me, and that was all. We did not make love. There was no tenderness, and it was simply sex. He brought me into the rear seat of his vehicle in the parking lot. It was a session of intense, quick screwing. There was little to no foreplay since we had done most of it in public at the bar. We knew exactly why we went in his vehicle. So he got his, and I got mine. It was enjoyable. He rubbed an itch, and that was all. I'd have felt the same way after using a toy. For the most of our time together, making love to Derek always left me emotional. We'd lay together and just enjoy being there. It was all over with Travis in the back seat, and all I wanted to do was get dressed and get home. That was the week before Derek discovered me with him at the pub. I know Derek will not believe me when I tell him. I was not about to screw Travis again. Yes, he got me off with his fingers, but this was unplanned, and he wouldn't be going anyplace that night, even his automobile. When I felt the pull on my ring finger and returned to the real world, I assumed Travis was attempting to take my wedding band. When I opened my eyes to see Derek, he slid the ring into his pocket before removing his own gold band and bouncing it around the table. It seemed like the whole universe had collapsed around me. I couldn't seem to register what was occurring. My mind couldn't grasp what was happening right in front of me. Derek's final expression was one of intense suffering. I've heard the phrase grief-stricken all my life, but it was the only time I had seen it happen. I can't unsee it now. No matter what else happens in my life, that moment will be with me forever. I eventually recovered enough to locate Derek's ring and exit the booth and the pub. Chloe stopped me on my way out and wanted to speak with me. She wanted me to try to cool myself a bit before getting in the vehicle and killing myself or someone else while rushing home. I couldn't take it anymore and collapsed in my vehicle, crying. I'm not sure how long I sat there, but it was too long. Every second I sat, I wasted time attempting to reach Derek. I tried calling him, but all I got was his voicemail. I'm not sure how many calls or texts I sent that night. I am not even sure what I said or typed when I did. Then, when he phoned, I did the stupidest thing I'd ever done. And coming from a stupid bitch who was found being banged at a bar by her husband, it must be fairly dumb, right? I had repeated old explanations to myself so many times that when I had a chance to throw myself at his feet and beg for another chance, I failed. I instead repeated those phrases to him. I knew him as well as anybody could. I understood how he thought about things. And I knew, or should have known, that I only had one opportunity to explain or take responsibility for my actions. Instead, I read the fallen woman's handbook to him. I knew it was over for us after the first foolish response to his query, but I couldn't believe how severely I had wrecked us. You know how it ended, so there's no need to recount anything over. Looking back, he was correct. We ended long before the terrible night. We ended when everything became about me. The third face to the outside world, it's identical to my second face. I detest it. I despise what it symbolizes. I despise what it shows me in my reflection. Derek would like the irony. I've finally gotten the face and physique I desired. Despite that, the mirror I see is the ugliest thing imaginable. I see a shallow, vain, and deceptive lady who used the guy she loved to gain what she desired. The irony here is, I just desire what I so easily tossed away. I want him to look at me and say, "You're pretty." And he loves me. But when he looks at me, nothing is there anymore. At first, head seemed distressed. And then, whenever we saw one other, he would leave. Now he seemed to gaze straight through me. I am nothing more than a ghost to him. Do you know what it is like? I'd prefer him be furious and harm me than just stare through me. A physical beating would be preferable than an emotional smack in the face every time he ignores my presence. This is the face that still receives praises, still turns some men's heads, and yet makes ladies despise me. But they have no idea what occurs when a man tells me I'm attractive or makes a clumsy move at me. Each compliment, every drink was directed my way. Every pass, every little amount of attention counts. It's like a smack to the face. Every one of them reminds me of what I did to him. Every one of them reminds me of the shallow, vain individual hidden behind the attractive facade. I do not go out anymore. I can't do it. Last time, I was so intoxicated that I can't remember leaving the pub or getting home. I barely recall hearing myself weep as my eyes regained focus. I was in my bathroom, naked from the waist upwards. and leaned over the sink. What drew my attention was the straight razor ready to slice my face. I recall thinking that I should seem as horrible on the exterior as I was on the inside, and I intended to slit my face to stop the ridiculous praises. That was just before I fainted. It's never pleasant to wake up on a chilly tile floor. It's bizarre to see the razor's chilly steel still out of its protecting mother-of-pearl grip. I did not end up cutting myself, but I did have a beautiful little bruise from hitting the floor. So this is what life is like today. I go to work. I come home. I attempt to live. I don't go out often because I can't handle having people stare at me. Either they don't know me, or they are trying to flirt with me, or they recognize me and treat me as if I were a foreign object caught in their shoe. Why did I do everything? I do not know yet. I questioned my therapist, and she told me that. That's the $64,000 question. I hope she's merely reciting an old phrase and not a specific price. I don't know all of the answers yet, but I can tell you something. Vanity and ignorance rank quite high on the list. Thank you for watching. Was Rachel's demise unavoidable, or could she have reversed course before it was too late? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the bell for more tales.